everybody. Welcome back. How's everyone doing? Wasn't lunch delicious? Although I think I ate too many carbs. The gnocchi was delicious, though. So I wanted to start off with a song. Does everybody know the song? Everybody loves kangaroo fighting. Do, 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 do. Who doesn't love marsupial arts, right? I do. So we're about to get a black belt in getting teams more motivated. It's going to be so amazing. I am happy to introduce Alan Furlong. He's built 2 successful tech companies. He's a pretty funny guy. He's going to be talking about why some teams are happy and why some are not. So let's go ahead and give a round of applause for Alan. That's going to tell us how to be the leaders we really wanna be.
Hello, how is everyone? Deathly silence. Okay, the carbs have kicked in, everyone's already fallen asleep. How are we all? Are we well? Yeah, right on. Okay, excellent. I love the scream at the front. It's really funny, I lived in Australia for 12 years, so to see a large kangaroo coming towards me, that happy, was quite a wonderful thing to start the day with. So, the science of what makes us tick. What are we going to talk about? So, Sherpa People Systems are passionate about you guys, the human beings behind the technology, and looking after yourselves. So what I'm here to explain at the macro level, the big picture level, is these are the things that make us tick. But then I'm going to end with something practical. These are the small things you can do every day to make sure that you're looking after yourself. Is that okay? Sound cool? Yes. Okay. All right. I'll take that as a yes. So I just want to get started by looking at where we're at right now. So this is kind of a little bit about the landscape of where things are at right now. We've got, in the UK, 20 million Britons who are physically inactive. That was a story in the BBC quite recently. Depression is now the tops the list of the causes of ill health globally. It's interesting, huh? And now, this is a good one. This is from our friends at Gallup. Worldwide, only 13% of employees are engaged at work. That means 87% of employees are neutral, disengaged, or actively disengaged. And actively disengaged means that they're so unhappy, they're outside in the car park letting the manager's tires down. Okay? So, stress. 77% of people regularly experience physical symptoms caused by stress, and 76% cited money and work as the main causes. Now, this is very recent. This is only last month, I think. 1 in 3 sick notes in the UK were for mental health issues. The most recent thing that I've seen around this area was a study of 10,000 teenage girls in the UK, found 1 in 4 were showing signs of depression. So, my question is, how many people in the room are under the age of 30? It's okay, you can admit it, it's all right, good. All right, so you are the most stressed generation, according to the American Psychological Association. You have the highest rates of depression, 19%, and have the highest rates of anxiety disorders, about 12%. Now, when I showed this slide last week, a guy in the audience went, "Yay, we win!" So clearly you're also one of the most competitive generations as well, so that's good. So although this topic can be a bit heavy sometimes, I would just ask you, brothers and sisters, to just come with me, okay? And we'll try and make it a positive experience. Now, what are some of the drivers of why we're struggling? Now, I could probably spend a couple of hours just on this, but I have 25 minutes, so I'm going to highlight a couple of big ones. The first one is what I call the war on sleep. So the war on sleep basically is in 1942, we were averaging about 8 hours sleep, and right now we're averaging about 6.5 hours sleep. Now, I am sure many of you have read some of the research of what happens when we're not getting enough sleep. So again, Oxford University quite recently showed that within 3 days of reducing your sleep from 8 hours to 4 hours, all of the sort of, positive indicators start going down within 3 days, and all of the negative indicators, your level of stress, your kind of emotional balance, all of those negative indicators start going up within 3 days. Now, another one. Forgive me if there's anyone here from Facebook. Probably isn't. Social media use. So this is a study from the Harvard Business Review that long-term use of Facebook actually makes you feel worse. Now, we do know in the world of psychology that social comparison makes you feel worse. So you pull up at the traffic lights in your brand new BMW, and then somebody pulls up beside you in a brand new convertible Aston Martin, and you go, oh, flip. All words to that effect. That's social comparison in a nutshell. It doesn't make you feel good. What we don't know is there are other things in social media that also sort of impact that sense of ill-being rather than well-being. Now, multitasking, hands up. When people are working in a room, have you got Slack running while you're working? Yeah, put your phones next to your screens. Keep your hands raised. We're all in it together. Lovely. Email, instant messaging. Okay, here's the deal. We actually don't multitask. We task switch. And what that does is it means that our brains end up using more brain power than required for the job at hand. We also, because our brains are constantly switching tasks, we actually start producing stress hormones in the brain. Okay? Now, last two. Open plan office. Who works in an open plan office? Good, everyone's raising their hands more vigorously now, okay? Open plan office, we are not saying it's all bad, but what we are, because there is a social aspect of work that's incredibly important, but what we do know is that distraction is a problem in open plan offices. Would you agree, brothers and sisters? Yeah, right on. Okay, now, we know now, because of a lady called Gloria Mark, that it takes, on average, 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back to the job that you were doing before you were distracted. And what you subconsciously do is you speed up, and once again, you start getting stressed. Now, cortisol. Who recognizes these symptoms? Bosses who fight with each other. Not a single person. Okay, you live in a perfect work environment. Okay, how about this? Politicking amongst senior members of staff. Yeah, good. Just not this time, all right? Okay, what about teams not sharing? Power bases being formed. Yes, okay, there's some giggles. Yes, I have been to your company. No. So what's running the game? Cortisol. And really, that neurochemical is there when we're fearful. So if I jumped off this wonderful stage and said, what's your name, sir? Rainer. And would you like to come up and finish my presentation for me? No, okay. So immediately, as soon as I started coming down to Rainer, cortisol starts rushing through his body. He's on alert, right? What the hell is this man got to do to me? Now, if I'd made Rainer stand up here, adrenaline would have flooded his system. These are natural, normal responses to fear. The problem that we have in many organizations is people don't feel comfortable. They feel fearful regularly, and so cortisol is running the game. And when cortisol runs the game, then this other chemical called oxytocin, which is responsible for caring and sharing, that disappears, okay? Now, Rainer, if I said to him, could you be really creative right now? When I jump down in front of him, it's virtually impossible. All he can see is run away, or I'm going to punch you. One of the two, right? Above and beyond that, nothing else. Now, okay, I want to ask a really important question, and I'd appreciate 100% honesty. How many people in this room know of somebody close to them, by which I mean a friend, a colleague, or a family member who has struggled with stress, or burnout, or anxiety, or depression? Please raise your hands. Now, keep your hands raised, and I want you to look around the room. Everybody look around the room. Okay? Now, I do this every time I talk, and every time I talk, nearly 99% of the room raise their hands. Now, the good thing is that means we're okay talking about it. Yes? You would agree? Yes, Al. Okay, so I want to just run a quick test by you to see if you recognize any of these signs. So I'll go through the psychological signs quickly. Becoming emotionally remote or removing oneself from others. I don't want you to raise your hand. Just do a mental tick if any of these resonate. Endless rumination or forgetfulness or procrastination. Loss of judgment or confidence. Loss of interest or pleasure. Angry outbursts, or you're easily irritated and increasingly cynical. Or finally, you're more emotional, so you can't stop crying at certain movies. Now, I need to caveat that one, because we all have a movie. Now, for me, it was Dumbo. It still is. And that bit where Dumbo's mum is locked up and her trunk comes out of the door, in a cage, and she's, just waggling Dumbo backwards and forwards in the music, and I cry every time. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting emotional on just really random things. Yeah? Okay. Now, physical signs, skin rashes or depleted immune system. So you can't shake off a cold. It's been hanging around for weeks. Yawning too much, or you've become sort of conscious of your breathing. Feeling tired all of the time, or poor concentration. Tension in the solar plexus. So you feel tight, and muscle tightness generally. Poor sleep or insomnia. Need a couple of glasses of wine to get yourself to sleep. Already people are sniggering. Now, has anybody got any idea what these are signs of? Shout out loudly if you can. Burnout. Who said burnout? Right, you get 10 gold stars and 3 bags of cheesy Wotsits. Brilliant. They are some of the sort of early signs of burnout. And although I can't say, look, if you've got 3 out of 10, you should, start making changes. If you've got 7 out of 10, you should really start looking at seeing a professional, blah, blah, blah. What I can tell you is, if any of these are showing up in your life, it is important that you make some changes, okay? It's really important. Now, some of it is not chronic. So you just need to make some adjustments. But I have talked in rooms where people have come up to me at the end and said, I had 8 out of 10. And if you've got 8 out of 10, then please go and seek professional help. Now, at this point, everybody's looking thoroughly miserable. Okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do is please stand up. I'm going to come across this room. Please stand up. Yes, you have to physically get up. Awesome. All right, I want you to turn to one person next to you. I want you to look at them straight in the eye and say with all passion and conviction, I love you more than any potato. I'm only joking. Now, some people's cortisol levels just shot up, and some people's love oxytocin levels shot up. You don't have to say that. Just talk about one thing that you either knew and was reaffirmed, or one thing that you've just learned. We'll just do that for 2 minutes. Just talk to that person now about one thing you've learned, or one thing that you go, hold on a sec, I didn't know that. I think I need to make some changes. Okay, all right, brothers and sisters of the Angular world, we'll pause there. You can now sit down. There are no accidents as to why I asked you to stand up. I am very conscious of the fact that this morning your brain's been working pretty hard. All of you have a very high cognitive load generally, and so what I'm just trying to do is get the blood moving around the system and get you to use a different part of your brain. So we come to the sort of positive side of this brief talk, which is what is it that really makes human beings tick? And you kind of probably want to write this down, otherwise we'll share these slides. And by all means, come and ask me questions. I'll be around for the 2 days, and I'll be just there. Wherever there is tea, then there you will find me. So let's go. E. E stands for engagement of flow, the science of flow. Many of you, because of the nature of your work, where you're fully immersed, like modern craftspeople, is actually really good for your health. So this idea of being fully in flow, fully focused, is really good for your health. M, meaning and purpose. This morning somebody said that just building cool stuff is really, that's really what we love. That's actually what gives you a sense of meaning. Okay, and if you can overlay that with, hey, I'm building cool stuff that actually positively impacts the world, and that's meaningful to me, then you don't need to be motivated. We are meaning and purpose-seeking machines. P stands for positive emotion. The science around the impacts of positive emotion is unequivocal, but all of you have all seen what negative emotion does. Now we're starting to learn just how powerful positive emotion is and what it does to us, individually and collectively. Okay, O, others matter, relationships. There is a raft of science about how important relationships are to our well-being. That's why Gallup has one question that says, I have a best friend at work. The reason they have that question is they know that if somebody answers yes, their well-being is higher, their engagement is higher, and so on and so forth. W, wisdom or mastery. The reason why many of you are here is because you're learning stuff, right? You're growing your skills. And even right now, you're learning something about yourself. Okay, that process goes on forever until they put you in a pine box. Or if you're a cheap person, a cardboard box. So that process goes on until the day you die. And it's an innately important process to us all. E, the one that usually gets people rolling their eyes, exercise. You are designed to move 12 miles a day, lovely people, and most of us, all of us really, in this room, usually are sat on our bums. To give you an idea of how important this is, I strongly recommend a book called Spark by John Ratey. What we do know is when you do exercise, your brain produces a chemical called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and that is the chemical that's responsible for neurogenesis, the creation of new brain cells. So movement is important not simply for your physical body, but for brain health. R, resilience and grit. These are learned skills. How do you bounce back? How many people are under the pump a bit here? Yeah, like work is like pretty full on. Okay, it's normal, right? So it's about, I would say, at least half the audience. So this ability to cope is incredibly important. And the last one is safety. Simon Sinek is talking about this a lot at the minute, about a need for psychological safety. And we've seen what happens when you don't have psychological safety and the negative effects. So these are a couple of kind of resources I'd highly recommend. Marty Seligman's Flourish, Sparked by John Ratey, and a lovely one from John Kabat-Zinn, who's done years of research with meditators, called Full Catastrophe Living. So that's the sort of macro picture. This is what makes human beings flourish. And if you want to have a highly productive team, you kind of need to understand those big picture elements. But there is no point in actually trying to apply this unless you're doing it yourself. So I wanted to leave you with some really tactical, simple tactical things that you can do to improve your levels of well-being. The first one, 8 hours sleep. Okay? The science is unequivocal. Get some sleep. Have some decent hygiene around sleep. The second one is 4 hours of max, highly productive time a day. That's all you really have. So you're using an awful lot of brain power naturally because of your work. And on average, we have about 4 hours of highly productive time per day. That comes from a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. And if you are in that state of deep work, turn off your connected technology, ideally. All right? I'm very conscious that I don't live in a 100% world. I deal with human beings. It's an 85% world. All right? So just try your best. Or you could just have a break every 90 minutes. This break is about moving away from the work that you were doing and doing something completely different. All right? Play pool, juggle balls, read a novel. Just use a different part of your brain. And drink water, plenty of water. So this is from two guys called Jim Law and Tony Schwartz. No tech after 7 p.m. This always raises a couple of smiles. I have young children, so 7 p.m. is my cutoff. Otherwise, I don't get to kind of read them stories and that kind of thing. For some of you, it may be 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., but at least an hour before you go to bed. Blue screens, we now know, interfere with your ability to get to sleep and also the quality of your sleep. But not only that, life is short, right? And trust me, if you end up in a situation like me and my wife, where I'm sat on one end of the sofa and she's sat on the other, hi, how are you? I'm fine, thanks, right? You know, it's kind of insane. There's no real relationship there. So turning the technology off is important to your well-being. Mind-focused time. So I think Andy's running sessions at the minute about mindfulness. I can tell you at least over 100 different research papers that show the power of mind-focused time. That's what I call it. Call it mindfulness, you can call it meditation, they're different things, but it's about what I call, the passive sense of flow rather than active. You're not actively immersed in something, you're kind of mentally giving the brain a rest. John Kabat-Zinn said we should be called human doings, not human beings, because we never be, we always do. Yeah? All right. Physical movement, I don't care whether you dance, do karate, run, cycle, swim. It's powerful. It is one of the main elements that helped me get over burnout in between those two tech companies. All right? Physical movement started changing the chemical composition of my brain. Finally, this is a hard one, email sprints. So I do email twice a day, sometimes three times a day max. So 20 to 30 minutes email sprints. All right? And what that does is it stops getting you drawn into this other world of email crap, right? So that you can focus on the job at hand. It's having discipline around your day. Is this helpful? These are simple, tactical things, but there is good, rigorous science behind each of them. Is this helpful? Yeah? Cool? All right. Okay. So I'm going to finish with one little thing. If you know you need to change something, just make one change. All right? Now, the reason why the children are holding up 2 fingers is we know from change science, if you try and change more than 2 things at the same time, your chances of success go down the hill massively. So just do one change. Of those 7 things, what one do I need to introduce into my life so I can get some balance back? Okay? Really that simple. Now, the other reason why we're here is to ask you a question. You are our tribe, and we wanted to ask a simple research question. So last week we got a whole bunch of people who gave us a response to this and did it privately. So what we know is that most of us fall into some of these areas, okay? Stress, regularly overwhelmed, unable to sleep, feeling unfulfilled or stuck or trapped, poor family life or work-life balance, low energy, ill often, not feeling fit, constant distraction at work, busy mind or priorities pile up, wanting to be happier and love life and have a high mood level, wanting to feel safe in your job or secure financially, wishing you are able to cope or to be able to bounce back better. Sorry, that's missing that there. Or, I don't have any of these issues. I'm calm and happy and optimistic and life is fabulous. Now, the only way that Matt and I, so Matt is the other co-founder who's over in the corner there, could think of getting some data. So what we're in the process of doing is building tech that actually profoundly positively impacts people's behavioral change. And so the only way we could do this is for people just to text us. So last week, a whole bunch of people texted us, and shortly I will tell you which of these came out top. So if you can text us, you can do one of 2 ways. Just text us anonymously and say, number 9 is me, life is happy, I'm happy. Or number 1 is me. And you can text anonymously, and we don't do anything with your number. We just delete it. What we do get is a clear idea of what is the most pressing problem. Now, you can't text and add your name and say it's John and then come and talk to us afterwards. It's entirely up to you. Is that okay, guys? And so what we do with this research is it helps us understand what we need to build. And you guys are like, this is the perfect room for us because there's some really clever people in this room to help address the issue. Is that all right? We all good? Cool bananas. All right, so please just drop us a text and let us know. Now, I've deliberately gone through things fairly quickly. If anybody wants to talk to me or Matt, we will be here in the main kind of refreshment area. We'll be hanging around there, no problem. When it comes to looking after teams, it's impossible to do a great job unless you're practicing some of these things yourself. Does that make sense? Okay, all right. So I want to say thank you very much for allowing us to come and talk to you. You're an amazing group of people doing amazing things. We'd like to do our bit eventually with some of your wisdom to create technology that does a profound good. Look after yourselves. Make one change if you can, and then look after your team. All right, the old oxygen mask principle. So thanks a million for your time. God bless you all, and look forward to talking to you at the break.
Thank you so much, Alan. Can I have a hug? I need to hug a potato. Are you supposed to be the potato? I'm giving you a hug.
Oh, right. Sorry.
See, that was his cortisol increasing. Like, what is she doing? Oh, my God. All right, so next up in Jupiter, we have Advanced Angular Concepts with Alex Rickabaugh. And in Saturn, stay on, and we'll be having Asim Hussein talk about AngularJS migration. It's going to be fun. excited too. Well, actually, I have to ask you guys a real question. Who in this room is ready to duck out of AngularJS and migrate over to Angular? Raise of hands, 1, 2. Okay, good, good. I was going to goose, it was probably most of you. So Asim to know, a pretty cool dude that goes by the name of Asim, standing right here. He Asims to do some pretty cool things like teach over 50,000 students on his website, codecraft.tv, so awesome, and is a senior cloud developer advocate for Microsoft. So let's quickly put our hands together for Asim Hussain.
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? Awesome. So I talk about Angular migration a lot. I spoke about it at NGConf this year, in Barcelona at Angular Camp, in Israel at Angular Up. I run workshops on it, and I've just spoken at meetups on it as well. But the same thing happens every time I finish one of my lectures, which is I get a bunch of people, I'm sure I'm going to get a few of you today, you're going to come to me afterwards and a little bit frustrated at the NG upgrade approach because it isn't working for you. It isn't working for your use case. Now, it's a great solution. It's actually a technical marvel, I think. No other framework has ever put this much effort into helping people migrate from one version to the next. But it doesn't really cover all the use cases. So I'm going to show you an alternative approach today. It's an alternative to the NG upgrade module approach. It has its own downsides, but I believe it covers a broader range of use cases. And I actually call it bulletproof migration. Well, today I'm calling it bulletproof migration. The name changes on a weekly basis. What are we going to talk about? So first off, I'm just going to do a really quick overview on the NG upgrade approach. Very, very quick, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Then I'm going to talk about why I think most migrations fail, or why I think migrations fail. And then I'm going to explain the solution I'm talking about. So thank you very much for the intro, Tracy. But here's another one. My name's Asim Hussain. You can find me on Twitter at JawAche. Everybody gets confused at that one. It's JawAche, not Jawashe. And again, I blog about Angular and JavaScript at codecraft.tv. And yes, I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft, which means I work with the Azure team. So if any of you use Azure or don't use Azure and have any questions on it, come speak to me afterwards. So again, really quick intro to the NG upgrade. So just for the colorblind of you in the audience, when I say Angular, it's going to be blue. When I say AngularJS, it's going to be red. In the NG upgrade module, what we do is we dual boot an application with both the AngularJS and Angular 5 libraries. And then this might be the different entities in your application. And by dual booting, this gives us the ability to basically upgrade one entity at a time, be that a service, a resource, a controller, whatever, right? And then what we do, or the way I recommend migrating using NG upgrade, is basically going through the leaves, up your application, upgrading one entity at a time until eventually everything is Angular 5, then you drop AngularJS, and you have an Angular 5 application. Okay, great, right? That's great. So then, why do migrations fail? And this is my opinion. Now, I think it's for two reasons. One, I call other baggage, and the other one I call clean house. And I'm going to explain these two terms in a second. Let's start off with other baggage. So, we don't build our applications in isolation, okay? We use a lot of other modules. So when you're building an AngularJS application, for instance, you might be using Bootstrap, a Bootstrap library, Bootstrap 2.3.2. When I was building AngularJS on a daily basis, I would be using UI Router. I'd probably use AngularStrap or ng Bootstrap, can't remember. You'd be using a whole bunch of other third-party libraries, okay? So when we migrate, some of these modules are then absorbed into the main Angular framework. So for instance, I would drop UI Router and use the Angular Router. I might not use AngularStrap. But then sometimes you just want to upgrade some of these modules. So as I migrate to 5, I might want to move from Bootstrap 2 to Bootstrap 4. Okay, makes sense. But we're not running two separate applications when we're migrating using ng upgrade module. We're running one application using one global namespace. So that means it has to share the same modules and the same baggage. And for instance, it means you can't have two versions of Bootstrap running, okay? It's just, you're stuck with one. So what are some of the solutions? Well, one of them is you just keep the baggage. So then as you migrate your AngularJS application to Angular 5, you then still keep Bootstrap 2. So now you have an Angular 5 application running with Bootstrap 2, which never really felt good to me. And I've worked with clients where we've had to go by this approach. And actually has an additional problem where that people might be building Bootstrap 3 or 4 Angular 5 components and releasing them. Nobody is creating a Bootstrap 2 date picker with Angular 5 support at all. So that's one solution. It's not a great solution. What's another solution? The other solution I found was just to migrate your AngularJS application to Bootstrap 4 and then migrate to 5. Okay? That never felt good as well, because then you're putting all this effort to migrate this legacy application that you're trying to get rid of in the first place to Bootstrap 4, only to then just throw away all that code later on. Ideally, what we want is you want a solution where your AngularJS application is using 2, then as you migrate to 5, at the same time you migrate to 4. That's the goal, that's what we want, right? So what's the other reason I think that migrations fail? And I call it clean house. So I say you have to clean your house before you migrate. Now, when AngularJS first came out, we had no idea how to architect a good AngularJS application. We had no idea. We'd use controllers instead of components. I use scope inheritance as a core feature of my architecture, right? But now we know we're supposed to use controller as. I use scope watch probably far too much than I should have. And maybe I used emit and broadcast too much. So kind of in terms of the current standards, my old AngularJS applications probably sit around here. But imagine if you were to build an AngularJS application today, with everything we now know about how to build a good AngularJS application. That's where you need to be before you start your migration journey, okay? You can kind of upgrade as you go along and fix things, but in my experience in working with a bunch of clients on this, it's far better just to take your AngularJS application, bring it to today's standards, TypeScript, file structure, whatever, before you start your process of migration. But like most of us, we're staring at complex architectures, yeah, with years of investment. I mean, Angular has been out for a year, so if you all are still working on an AngularJS application right now, it's probably at least 2, 3, 4 years old, maybe 5, right? It's had years of investment, maybe tens of thousands of hours of effort, and just telling you, oh, by the way, you need to refactor everything to meet modern standards, it's not really possible, right? It's at best a really depressing request, and at worst, it's just completely impossible to do. And for a lot of people who I explain this to, they say, well, it's almost just the same as rewriting it from scratch. So that's why I've come up with another solution. I would call it a halfway between a rewrite from scratch and a migration approach. And I would have to say I didn't come up with the solution myself. It was actually at my last engagement before I was working at Microsoft. My replacement was coming along and I was training him up. I explained this, like, I spent 6 months getting this ugly framework over to get working onto Angular. And after about a few minutes, he just turned around to me and said, well, why don't you just use an iframe? I was like, what? He goes, yeah, just have a modern Angular SPA, built using the modern framework. And then if you want to show the old content, just iframe in your old AngularJS application. And I was like, no, my first reaction was to really object. I actually remember being next to him and I was like, no. But then I thought about it for a few minutes and I realized actually, that's not a bad idea. Right? I actually eventually started feeling dumb for not thinking of it in the first place. And so I worked on it fairly recently, a couple of months ago now, I think, and I basically came up with a demo, and I'll just show you the demo right now. It's pretty simple. You have to trust me. This is currently a Bootstrap 4, Angular 4 application. And look at the URL. It's just a normal URL with I use hash-based routing / Angular at the end. And then, what do I do now? I can't remember. Oh yeah, and then we click on the AngularJS, and those with sharp eyes can then instantly see this is a Bootstrap 2 application with Angular 1.6. And the key thing is, I think I go, yeah, and then there's the URL. It's the same URL with just AngularJS at the end. And then if I inspect element, if I scroll up, it's just an iframe, okay? And you see, it's a router outlet, and I've got a component called app iframe that I'm injecting in. Now, if I go back into the Angular application and inspect element again, it's just a standard Angular application with something called an app counter component that I'm injecting in. And the other thing is I'm clicking, if I click the number, it increases. But if you see, the number is shared, the state is shared between both of these applications. They're two iframes. They're two completely separate applications. And we're sharing routing, and we're sharing state. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about. They're two completely separate applications that have their own global namespace. So that means you don't have to worry about the baggage. Your Angular 5 application can use whatever modules and third-party libraries that it wants. It's using Bootstrap 4. Your AngularJS, you don't have to clean house, so your AngularJS application can still stay. Its wonderful, unique architecture can still stay as it is. You don't need to touch it. So what are some of the core concepts you need to kind of figure out to get this working? One of them is called root ownership, and the other one is just basically shared state. Okay, so I'm going to go through a bunch of these. So for root ownership, we start with an Angular application that just iframes in our AngularJS application. Okay, or just imagine it's just the whole thing is just an iframed in AngularJS application. So all the URLs are handled by your AngularJS application. And then, can you see? I don't know, it might be a bit too subtle. Okay, so basically, then Angular starts taking over the roots. You write the root in Angular and then configure the application so every time that root is requested, we show the Angular app and not the AngularJS application. And then that's how we migrate. We migrate one root at a time over from AngularJS to Angular until eventually it's just Angular. Okay? So, but what do I mean by Angular starts taking over? So, in this slide, you'll see that the top is AngularJS with it's actually UI router configuration, and the bottom is just our Angular router configuration. So, what I mean by this is we might start off with our Angular application as just one root, the fallback root at the end. All of our roots are in our AngularJS application, and then we simply just, once we migrate a root, we just simply delete it from our AngularJS router configuration and move it to our Angular app root, Angular router. But then we kind of get into this thorny issue because for a period of time you're going to have both an AngularJS and an Angular app both handling different roots for a same application. Okay, so who owns the root? Okay, Angular or AngularJS, and how do you coordinate between the two? I'm going to explain this with a bunch of use cases. So this is one use case. So somebody is on page 5, which is AngularJS. They click something, and the thing they want to click to is page 4, which is, again, just handled by AngularJS. There's nothing you need to do. There's nothing you need to do here. It's all handled within the same application. Again, we've got Angular. So someone clicks on page 2, which is Angular. They want to go to page 1. Again, it's just Angular. So it's all handled within the same application. So there's nothing you need to do. The interesting thing is something like this. So somebody's clicking on makes a click on an Angular page, and the actual page they want to display is an AngularJS page. How do you actually handle that? How do you implement that? So I've got some code to show you. This is just one way I did it. So with the Angular root configuration, you can have something called a fallback root. So if you see at the end, it's got the 2 stars. That means if it doesn't match any other route, it will hit the fallback route at the end. When that route gets hit, we inject in the iframe component. What's the iframe component? That's it. That's the HTML for the iframe component. Just iframe, and I set the source value to a URL. It has just a simple CSS. I've tried a bunch of different ways. I think the best thing with an iframe was just make it take up maximum width and size of the page. Otherwise, you start dealing with scroll bars and ugly little issues like that. And that's the actual code itself. I hope you can see it. So the key line is there. So when the iframe component is initialized, I subscribe to the activated route. I get the URL. I then have to do some manipulation to convert this URL to something the AngularJS application understands. Then I have to do this kind of weird thing. So in Angular, it sanitizes stuff by default, so you kind of have to desanitize it to allow that URL to be used in an iframe. And then do something called listen for fallback routing events, which I'll go into later on. So basically, what's going on? So I click in my Angular application. It searches for that URL in the root configuration. It can't find it, so it goes to the fallback route. The fallback route adds in the iframe component, which just puts the right URL to show that URL from the AngularJS application. OK, that's from Angular to AngularJS sorted. What about the other way around? What if you click on an AngularJS page and the actual page you want to display is an Angular page? How do you actually handle that? You can't use the same solution because you're not trying to put an iframe in a page. You're trying to communicate from a child iframe to a parent iframe. So you can do something like reasonably similar. So this is the root configuration for the AngularJS application. You can see at the bottom, I've got an otherwise. That's how you fall back with UI router. And in there, I call parent.postMessage. The parent is a special variable that becomes available to you when you are being iframed in. So it's the parent iframe. So I call parent, and I can post a message to the parent iframe. And I'm passing an object, which is the URL that I want to navigate to. Okay? And then in the iframe component, in the listen to fallback events, I'm basically listening for that event, and when I get it, I'm calling navigate by URL on my own router. Now, there's code for this that you can get in the slides later on, so don't worry about it too much. So basically, what am I doing? When I click in the AngularJS application, it's hitting the fallback route, because that route isn't there, and then passing a message using the postMessage API to the parent Angular application, and it's then navigating with navigate by URL. Okay? So that's how we kind of handle routing, shared routing between these two applications. How do we handle shared state? Now, there's so many different ways of handling this problem. I'm showing you what I think is the simplest way to handle this problem. And that's basically, as long as you keep your application, your legacy and your Angular application in the same domain, it means it's sharing the same cookies and it's sharing the same local storage. If it's sharing the same cookies and you're using authentication, it means if you log in on one, you're logged in on both. And if you're sharing local storage, it means you can share the same data between both the applications. And it also means you can use something called storage events to communicate between the two different apps. I'll show you in a second. So basically, whenever I set that counter, I'm also setting it in local storage under counter, okay? And then I can just listen to storage events. So storage events are sent every time you save something to local storage. So I can listen to that in my Angular application, and if local storage is saving something called counter, I can then set the value locally. So that's also how you can synchronize data between, like if you have the same application open in multiple tabs, same domain, you can synchronize between all those tabs via local storage. And all that an iframe is a separate application, so you can synchronize between an iframe and the parent iframe with local storage and storage events. So that's it, basically. So in summary, with the ng module approach, I mean, it's a great approach, right? It really is. I've used it successfully several times. But it comes with certain issues. It comes with other baggage you need to deal with. And it also comes with the fact you need to your architecture needs to be at a certain standard for it to work. Whenever working with clients on this, I used to say, well, if you're already using pretty modern modules, and if you're already kind of a pretty decently architected AngularJS application, you've got a good chance of migrating with the ng module. If you're using really old modules, or you've got really pretty bad architecture, when I look back through some of my old AngularJS applications, it's pretty interesting. Then the ng module approach just takes a little bit too much effort to be worthwhile. So with the iframe solution, you don't have to deal with the old baggage. They're two completely separate applications. They can have their own modules, and you can just leave your wonderful AngularJS application with all of its emit and broadcast. You can leave it exactly as it is and just migrate to a beautiful new Angular application. But I think kind of one of the really interesting things about the approach I'm talking about here is that you can use it with other frameworks. Okay? It's just an iframe. I've just migrated from AngularJS to Angular. Doesn't matter. I can migrate from Vue to Angular, from React to Angular, from Angular to Vue. But that's one of the things I'm really excited about this approach, is that I'm kind of getting a little bit tired of all the framework wars that are going on in the world right now. If we can live in a world with multiple cultures, multiple religions, multiple beliefs, then I think we can live in a world with 3 JavaScript frameworks. So that's it. If you want to find out more information, I have a blog post about this on my blog on codecraft.tv. I have all the code, all the samples, everything you need. And if you want to, you can follow me. Okay, take a picture. You don't have to take a picture, because if you follow me on Twitter, which you can do here, then I'll be posting them on Twitter later on. It has all the links on the end of the slides as well. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Follow the jaw ache. Thank you for clearing that up, by the way. I did not know. I always thought it was Jawashe or something like that.
Yeah.
Jaw ache. It's even better. All right. Well, thank you again. So next up, we have, let's see, what do we have? Oh, we have Icicle. Are we going to talk about what's going on in the next room? No, because you guys can't leave. All right. Do you need to get set up or anything? Awesome. Well, I have some Angular Jeopardy while Icicle gets set up. What is the only external dependency in Angular? Shout it out. Well, RxJS, very good. It should have been what is RxJS, but I won't fault you for it. Let me see. Okay, I have another one. This is the command to run the TypeScript compiler from the command line. TSC, ooh, you guys are good. You must do Angular. All right. This is the module that contains important decorators like ng module and component. What is Angular core? Ooh. Are you guys learning? Okay. This decorator should be used to decorate every service in Angular. Man, you're good right here. And another one over here. Okay, let's see. Server-side rendering in Angular. Server-side rendering in Angular. I didn't hear it. Universal! You're cheating. I'm just kidding. Okay, let's see. I have another one. I'll do one off the top of my head. So the new operators in RxJS are called this. Lettable or pipeable. Did you know? True or false? Lettable operators are tree shakeable. True. That's right. Shake those trees. Shake, 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 shake. I can waste time up here. Okay, let's see. This is the RxJS operation that you use to convert data in a stream. Oh, there we go. Let's see, what else? Angular core. Okay, here's one. This is the feature of Angular which allows you to format data in a template. Format data in a template. The feature of Angular. Somebody said it. Pipes. Pipes. He is the father of Angular. Mishko, there we go. And apparently the spirit of Angular is Igor, there we go. He's not the stepson of Angular. I thought he was the stepson of Angular. Man, I think that's all I have. But you guys are going to get this amazing lady who actually has blue hair. I just have, and purple, right? Blue and purple.
Oh, I didn't see.
Yeah, I know. But see, I didn't dye my hair because I can't do that. You can do it, but I can't. So
I'll do yours.
Are you ready? I'm going to introduce you.
Yeah. Just 1 second. Let me run this to make sure.
So who is going to migrate their Vue.js application to Angular 5? Anybody doing that? Any React users in the audience? 1, 2, 3. There we go. Awesome. You guys are migrating all your React apps to sticking them all in iframes into your Angular app. So how many of you guys say PWA, pronounce it pois? Anybody pronounce PWA pois? Chris Fritz from the Vue core team was the first person that said, well, you know, you want to make it a pois. I was like, wait, what's a pois? But now I want to make faux pois, like bad PWAs. Faux pois, get it? It's a good talk thing, I think. Talk title, I think. Are you ready? All right, so I want to go ahead and introduce one of my favorite people. Can I have a hug too? Oh, I love you. Okay, so this next talk, I'm sure, is going to go swimmingly well, okay? Anybody wonder how to get productive in WebVR? I'm sure that's why you all are here. It seems like a lot to learn, and sometimes I always ask myself, what'll I do? How am I going to learn this stuff? So we are very lucky to have Aishagul of Narwhal, one of my fellow Google developer experts, and an amazing female in the Angular community, talk about WebVR today. So let's go ahead and give her a big round of applause.
Thank you. You were awesome. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that great introduction. WebVR is a very exciting world. I really do believe in. And how many people just dabble with it? Anybody? Oh, few. Great. So this talk is for you. I'm so glad you're interested. A little bit about myself. So I work at Narwhal. I don't know if you heard of it today, but there's a bunch of us here. Justin is right here, Victor and Jeff and me. So what we do, and also I'm a Google developer expert for Angular team. And you can follow me at icesomething on Twitter. And what we do at Narwhal is we do help you build more productive applications. And we do have these extensions along with the Angular CLI, helps you to build more manageable data management with RxJS stores, and upgrade your applications and all that great stuff. And you can read Justin's documentation at narwhal.io/NX about that. And if you like to follow along, and I have lots of resources for you in my slides, you can find them on bit.ly WebVR AR. And I have an AR demo on GitHub here for you, but I will tweet my application that we are going to see today. So just want to tell you where we are, like why it's a very good time right now to start learning about WebVR and start introducing it to your, at least product managers, you know, not to your applications, but at least go back to your teams and just talk about it a little bit. And where we are in WebVR API and what's going on in there. And some of the tools for AR and VR that's available right now for us and very easy to use. And finally, I will show you some code and talk to you about like why it's a very good idea to use it with Angular. So a little bit of terminology. Reality is where we are right now. And virtual reality is the total edge, the other end of the spectrum. So when we create our own realities and everything is virtual, we are totally immersed in an environment and not just like this meeting that you're very bored, you can just run away and create your own reality and live in that. Of course, there are better uses for it, and you can actually, there are so many medical uses right now. Researchers are using VR to deal with pain, and it's a great educational tool, and not just for running away from your reality while you're in a very boring meeting. So previously, I worked at Autodesk. We were creating this VR authoring tool, and our main purpose was to enable Smithsonian Museum, it's a natural history museum in Washington, D.C., to allow to create these great experiences. And they could have created just 3D experiences. They were able to just scan everything that they have. They're creating this amazing archive of every artifact that they have. But it's kind of not enough. So it's a really different experience to just see and turn things around, but just to also be able to walk around this mammoth and make yourself small or big and interact with it and just be the animal that's actually going to be eaten by this animal is a very interesting experience. The other thing we were able to create for them is not just to see what was being discovered, but where it was discovered. All these artifacts that came out, so like what did the cave look like? How did these people dig these things out? So it's a very interesting experience. And you have all these virtual tours and all these scans available for you on 3dsi.edu. You can hold the Lincoln's deathbed mask in your hand and look at all these interesting stuff, so it's really cool. So you might say these are all very like edge case things, but if you have any kind of data that you're displaying and it is related to the real world, WebVR is also a great tool. So this is a great article that I recently found by Vladimir. And he talks about creating great experiences. So our brains evolved to work around in a 3D environment and in a spatial thinking, way of thinking. So if you see a 2D graph of how much people make on, even if it's in a VR environment, that's not very meaningful if it's an abstract 2D image. But if you have real size people around you that you're surrounded with, and you can actually see the differences between them, that's a totally different feeling. And you're creating an experience, and you're creating a feeling. And that's true for most of the products that are used in any kind of 3D environment. So, and he has a very interesting article if you'd like to check it out. And in between virtual reality and our own reality, there's augmented reality, which is a way of extending our reality with some 3D or any kind of information. So I'm mentioning this because they're all together called mixed reality, and they're all using similar APIs. So AR is also using WebGL API, which is allowing us to create 3D on the browser, and also using some WebVR to allow the interactions then. So on. The additional thing AR is using is the media capture API, which has been around for a while now. So WebGL is pretty well supported. We've been playing 3D games on the browser for a long time, which is a really cool thing. WebVR is not as much, but it is available under a flag on Chrome if you can enable it by enabling the WebVR flag. And most of the browsers are on the same page about creating the same APIs available, making it available. And Firefox is leading the way. User media support has been around for a long time. We've been using it for like chat applications and any kind of video applications, but it's not working great with iPhone, unfortunately. And all these browsers are also helping us to create these experiences. They're making it very easy for us. They're creating these amazing component libraries. One of them is called A-Frame. If you are interested in the workshop today or tomorrow, the WebVR workshop, I think you can get to know A-Frame a little bit. It's very much like Angular components, HTML-based, very declarative way of creating 3D experiences. But you still have to get yourself a little bit familiarized with the idea of creating a 3D world. Google has all these amazing 3D models. They made them available for you and allow the artists to upload these 3D models for you to be able to use at this Poly website. And it's really nice because they're usually very low poly, and they're designed to be more performance. And the other place that you could find amazing artwork is Sketchfab. It's more game and artist oriented, so you have to be a little bit careful about choosing your models because higher polygon count will make it really hard for your application. So I really like the way A-Frame is making creating 3D experiences very easy, and it has a great documentation and everything, so very good user base. I really like it, but one thing that I think it's doing is it's a little bit confusing if you try to understand how it actually really works. It makes it really a bit hard to understand because to create a 3D world, you have to have the lightings and cameras and things like that, and they all live in a canvas. And with A-Frame, what you're doing is you're creating these HTML elements, and they look like an HTML element, regular HTML element, but they're not. So you are not able to interact with them as if you were interacting with any other HTML element. So I feel like it's making it a little bit confusing because Canvas is an XML, and it has its own way of acting, sizing and everything else. And I think these tools, these other tools are making it a little bit more easier to transition from, having a very easy development environment to actually creating your own WebGL 3D environments. One of them is called Play Canvas, and the other one is Visor. So basically, they are kind of drag and drop, and then instead of creating HTML components, they allow you to change the settings on the canvas elements, which is, I think, really nice. And lastly, 3JS. That's my favorite. It's a library on top of WebGL, so it allows you to create 3D experiences very easily, basic with JavaScript objects. And it's been around for a long time now, and it has a great community. Started by this artist, Mr. Jube, because he wanted to create his 3D experiences, and there was nothing available out there. So he decided to learn coding, and then he did it himself. But now, most of the companies, Autodesk or Google included, they've been using their tools to create amazing experiences. Anyone used 3JS before? Nice. So what 3JS gets us is efficiency. It's very easy to learn. It's plain JavaScript objects, and it is really fast. It's optimized for us in many ways that we wouldn't be able to figure it out right away. And it allows you to write much shorter codes than writing the actual WebGL. And what Angular gives us, what I really like, is being able to put together the things that, package together the things that we want to package, and maybe give it to a designer or someone who doesn't have as much experience, and be able to just give some options and interact with the rest of our application. So what we will create is one component with some options and events handling. So as I mentioned, 3D lives in the canvas, and we create a canvas element as the element of our component. and we can define some events here. So we are display pointer restricted and not restricted. These are events that are defined for us. That are enabled only when you are on the VR experience, actual VR experience, when you put it into a device or when you click on a button to enable the VR. So we don't have to worry about that. It's defined for us. But we have to handle what we wanted to do afterwards. So the other things that we do is get some inputs. So this is how we work with the options. We can define the models that we want in our experience here, or like the lighting or anything interesting. And with the view charts decorator, we have access to the canvas. So we can work directly with the canvas and not touch the DOM elements directly using the native methods. And we have the host listeners and the lifecycle hooks that we can take advantage of, like the ng-init. So inside our ng-init, we are going to create our 3D scene with 3JS, and we are going to create a camera, and we are going to create our renderer to get things started. First thing we do is initiate a 3D scene, and then create a camera object. It's very easy, and it takes 4 different arguments. First of them is field of view. Okay, good, I remember. And the aspect ratio, near clipping, and the far clipping. And near clipping is what you don't see closer to the camera, and far clipping is what you don't see after that certain point in the camera. So you don't want to constantly be rendering everything inside your camera's view, so you wanted to limit it for efficiency and sometimes to hide things too. And one thing to remember is to give the width and height as the aspect, to calculate the aspect ratio. Otherwise, your images will be distorted. But you can, for performance reason, you can divide this into 2, or you can make it smaller, but the aspect ratio has to be the same ratio with the canvas width and height. And normally, outside of Angular, what we do is just append the element directly to the DOM, create a renderer, and then append it to the DOM element. But instead, there's an option to give to renderer. You can give options to the renderer, and one of these has to be the your component's element. So instead of directly appending anything to the DOM element, just remember to use your component's DOM element. So finally, you have to enable renderer's VR setting to be true. So what renderer does is, I think I haven't explained. So you have a camera. Anyone used film camera before? Anyone that old? Okay, well, maybe, I don't know, it's a retro thing to do now. So basically, what renderer does is takes the information, your viewpoint from your camera, and then translates it into a 2D environment, which is your canvas. So it is doing the same thing as taking a picture and then printing it on a paper or something like that. I haven't shown you what we are looking at, so it went crazy. So we have a bunch of elements, and if you can see, there's in the middle, there's this thing that I can try to show you, like how it's looking at things. So if I enter a VR environment, and if I try to rotate my point of view, I'm not able to hit any objects. So there's this circle right in the middle, if you could see. So that is for, and when it hits an object, it's very hard to do it here. it is changing the color of the object. It's just telling us like we have selected that. So what we are trying to do here is to, instead of using a gamepad API or any tools, we are trying to create this experience of looking at an object and being able to select it or hover over it. So to do that, we use this thing called ray casting. So basically, it's kind of like putting a laser on your camera, and whatever is intersecting with that light is going to be selected. This is kind of like a cheating way of using interaction, but it's being used very widely because it allows you to not to have any kind of hand tools and be able to create these experiences for cardboard, for example. And it's really nice. But in the future, in the very near future, with the WebVR 2.0, it will be integrated directly to the WebVR API, so we wouldn't have to use any kind of ray casting. So what I'm doing with the crosshair thing here is create that little donut, which is attached to my camera, and it's showing me where I'm looking at and where I'm aiming at. And it's basically a mesh, which is the term that we use to create the objects and define an object and put every definition that we need in it. And two definitions that we need, what the object will look like, which is the geometry. And in this case, it's the ring geometry, which makes it like the donut thing. And the other thing is the material, how the light is reflecting off of these objects. So we can actually see it. So we put these two things into this grouping thing, which is the mesh, and that's how we define any object. And on top of it, we can give many other options. Like in this case, I'm defining the basic material and then giving some color and opacity. Once we create a mesh, any kind of object, they are created in the 0, coordinates of our scene, including our camera. So that makes it impossible for us to see anything because everything is on top of each other. So I'm moving my crosshair a little bit further so it will be in front of my camera. And by adding it to the camera, what I'm doing is attaching it together. So it will be always moving wherever I'm looking through the camera. So once I have that, I'm adding this room thing, which is just a box that I'm in, and the camera, and some lighting so I can actually see anything in my scene. So far, we have the camera, and we have the renderer defined, and we have to add some objects in it, or particles, or wherever you like, and finally animate them, render them. So 3D objects is mentioned before. It needs three things: a mesh to hold things together, and the material and the geometry. And normally what we do is just initialize a 3D material from 3JS, and then add the material to it. And then once we have the mesh, the whole object defined as the cube, we have to add that into our scene. Remember, I mentioned everything is an object in 3JS. So everything is inside a scene object. So everything has to be added to the scene object for us to be able to see. And then we can define some animations on our objects, which is very much like the CSS transitions. So you can add to the rotation of X and Y. So in my particular case, this is a little bit looking, more complicated, but it's not. What we have is we have just randomized positioning, and we have some randomized scale to be able to create like 200 objects at the same time at once. And one thing that that might get scary for some people is the vector thing. What vector is basically defining a 3-point location. but it sounds like a lot of math, but it's actually defined for us, unless you're trying to do something very specific. If you're doing something random, it's very, very easy to use. And finally, we add everything, all of our objects, to our room object. The other thing that you can do is get those amazing models that I told you about from the Poly website or anywhere else. And to be able to do that, you need to have a loader and specific to the extension of your model. And in this case, we have a OBJ, and then we have a material that's defined with MTL extension. And we are loading them together and attaching the material to the object. And finally, we have to render everything over and over. And that's why we need to use the request animation frame, because not to make our users very dizzy, we have to render everything in 60 frames per second. And we talked about animate. And one very useful tool is to have also groups. In our case, our room was kind of acting as a group, but it's very easy to group things together and then animate them all together and add them together. And Raycaster is a library that is defined for you, so it's very easy to initialize. And then once we have it, we have to attach it to our camera and then set it from the camera and then calculate the intersections. When it's intersecting, we have to do the selection or any kind of interaction that we need. Okay, yeah, I was worried that I was running out of time, but I'm doing great. So this is the end of it, and I can show you the code briefly. You know, so there are some more implementation detail, but it's pretty much it. So we've learned what we need to use to create our web VR experiences. We need to create a 3D world with a camera, lighting, and we have interactions with raycasting, and we have these options to load any kind of object and interact with them through the raycasting. And you can find some of the other details on my code, which I will tweet later on. And if you are curious about the AR, I have this AR demo and that you can take a look at. And you have to have this image. You can just show it through your phone, which is called the hero image, to be able to see anything on it. And it doesn't work on iPhone, as mentioned. Well, thank you for your attention. Please follow me at iSomething on Twitter. I will tweet the demo and the slides later on. And check out the rest of the code examples there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. So before we head out, we are headed over to break. There are going to be some talks after that, but I wanted to mention Alexander Peshev and Daryl Brown. If you guys are in here and you guys still want to do the NG talk show, which, by the way, nobody should miss this NG talk show. Maybe it's not called NG talk show. Anyways, Shai's thing later on. Make sure to go to room 1 and talk to Ruth about that. Additionally, lightning talks. So we need more people to sign up for lightning talks. It's going to be held in this room during after hours. Again, 3-minute talks. You can talk about anything. You can just give puns. You can give, like, 15 things you didn't know about Angular that Shai didn't teach you or something like that. That'll be totally fine. At every 45 mark, there is a new session starting in the, it's not the meditation room, but anyways, the green room. So if you guys really enjoyed the mindfulness talk earlier, you guys can go ahead and do that. Right now we're heading over to coffee and some snacks. And then after that, Jesus and Ward are going to be in this room giving a talk, and then Jeff Cross is going to be in Jupiter giving a talk. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all soon. There we go. I'm just too excited right now. Can't wait for this next talk. We're going to do a really quick talk before we move on to our normal scheduling, but this is going to be a really cool, awesome talk because you're going to have Sophia come up from AG Grid, one of our amazing sponsors who helped make AngularConnect happen, and talk about why AG Grid is literally the best grid in the entire universe, right? All right, give her a round of applause.
Hey guys, how you doing? Anybody sleeping here? I really hope not. And if anybody is sleeping next to you, please wake him up now, right now. So, as you already know, my name is Sophia, and I do want to spare a few minutes telling you a bit more about AG Grid. So you see, I was thinking, how should I use my 5 minutes to convince you that indeed AG Grid is the best HTML5 grid in the world? Well, sorry about that. Just missed a slide over there. I mean, I could tell you about all the cool features that AG Grid has, but, well, let's face it, probably after this talk, you won't even remember the half of them. We can go even further, and we can go talking about Angular and how you can use AG Grid with Angular. Or even better, I can show you this colorful slide over here and tell you how to make this grid look pretty. And all of this is really cool indeed. But I feel like you've heard this probably 1,000 times so far. So what I really want to say to you today is how AG Grid was created and why. So AG Grid was created by a group of developers with extensive experience with building banking software. However, these developers had a problem with finding a product that would meet their development requirements. And eventually, they just decided to use their experience and their knowledge to build the exact product that would solve all of their problems, if I may say this. And this is the exact reason why AG Grid manages to capture all the needs of the enterprise by providing a smooth desktop-like experience into the web browser. And this is the exact reason why our clients are some of the biggest companies in the world, alongside with many businesses dealing with banking and finance. And if words are not enough for you, you should just check the numbers. And this is how the numbers are looking for AG Grid for the past 2 years. And if you don't believe numbers, I guess you can always come to the booth and see how things are really rolling there. And if you're not really interested, you should come again. You should pretend being interested. And then I'm going to give you a really nice cool swag t-shirt. So anyway, I'm just going to see you there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Awesome. So to start off our afternoon programming, I have a song that I will sing because it's to you, Ward and Jesus. Now I've had the Angular of my life. No, I never learned so much Angular before. Yes, I swear it's the truth, and I owe it all to Jesus and Ward. And that's how the day is going to get started. Come on up, guys. I just wanted to say really quickly, Jesus and Ward are just two awesome speakers that are totally going to teach us what we need to know about Angular dynamic pages. I'm so excited. By the way, Ward's outfit, give him a round of applause for this. It's pretty amazing, right? Yes. They're probably going to be teaching us a little more than two things about how to add dynamic pages to your application. Ward is a Microsoft MVP, very cool, a co-founder of IdeaBlade, and Jesus is also with IdeaBlade and super passionate about teaching developers and helping developers. So they're great guys to learn from. Go ahead and give them another big round of applause.
Well, hello. And thank you for coming. My name is Jesus Rodriguez, and this genie weird guy is...
Hello, mi nombre es Ward Bell. No, that's the best Spanish I can do. I am Ward Bell. I also am at IdeaBlade. We are colleagues together, and we have worked with others to build an Angular dynamic app that you can actually try yourself.
Yes. So, what are these dynamic apps?
I don't know, you tell me.
So, there are pages that we create on the fly. They are a mix of HTML and Angular components that are driven by metadata. What's metadata? We're going to learn that later. So, why?
I don't know. You tell me. I don't know why. I don't even know why we're here.
So, for example, you have a classic content management page, for example, the Angular IO site. Imagine we have like 150 guides. Do you want to have 150 components with templates? No, because they look the same, are the same exact component, just the HTML changes. That's not something you want to do.
No.
So what else can you do?
Well, a lot of the people I know are interested in creating dynamic forms that are driven by data. So maybe they have surveys, and maybe they have inspections or something like that. And you can't imagine that they want a developer to be involved in creating every single one. You would expect that there'd be some kind of authoring software by which the people who really knew what they were doing would actually generate those. And so we need some way to dynamically create these pages out of the metadata. Oh, by the way, there's probably your own idea, and you just insert that right here. You're part of the talk.
Yeah, we can share the ideas later.
So there's a problem.
There's a problem.
There is a problem.
Damn it.
It's, I love this. It's an unnatural act. Woo! It's an unnatural act in Angular. Why is that, Jesus?
So the problem is that there's exactly one template per component class, because the template and the component are like one single unit. They are inseparable.
Right. There's no way you don't get one without the other when you're done with the compiler. You got one.
Yeah. So we can say that the component class and template are static. We need to write them beforehand.
Right, because even if they're built once, we can't rebuild them on the fly. No, so we're kind of stuck. There were other technologies like Angular, JS, that you could do it, but not with Angular.
You can't say that in this.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to show you how to do it today our way, which is the way that the Angular documentation works. And I like to eat cookies. I don't know about you. So if you imagine that a chocolate chip cookie is the HTML with Angular component chocolate chips sprinkled across, we'll call those embeddable, then we have chocolate chip cookie. But I don't like just one chocolate chip cookie. I like lots of chocolate chip cookies, and they're all different, but they're all chocolate chip cookies. So this is a metaphor that may help you. But this right here is a page from?
Yeah, this is a page from the Angular docs. It looks like a normal page, but it has this component. All those components that you see on the screen.
Can we get everybody to say component?
Yes, it's like developers, but with components.
That's it. It's just a symphony of components.
Yes. So the thing is, all these components are generated on the fly.
Yeah. And we call these chocolate chips?
Embeddable components.
I love it when you say it.
Yes, you
say
have
it again.
to find the most complicated word for me. Embeddable components.
Embeddable. All right, what is an embeddable component?
They are normal components. I mean, they don't have any special keyword, something that makes them an embedded component. It's just a normal component like any other.
I'm expecting a but, a pero, somewhere in here. There's a but in this.
Yes, there's always a but.
There's always a but. But what?
So the problem is you cannot depend on dynamic input properties, because in a normal application you have a component that maybe pass some inputs to the component, but in this case we are generating that on the fly, so we don't have anything that will pass those dynamic inputs.
You're right, we can't bind to them.
That's correct. They can see the HTML between the tags, so for example you can have a code example, and inside the code example tag you can put some code to show. But the problem is that we cannot, they are only HTML. If you put some Angular inside those tags, they are not going to be...
I like it when you say, like, there's a foo tag in the beginning and an end foo tag in the end, and what's in the middle?
Whatever.
Blah, 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 right? Blah, blah, blah.
Anything you can put there, but that's going to be treated as normal HTML, so there's no direct interaction with that content.
Right, I can't fish it out with view children.
Nope.
Right, I can just throw the content up on the screen.
Plain HTML.
These are limits, but we can probably live with them.
Sure. And then we have to register that with what we call the magic machinery, which we're going to explain now.
Poof, that's why we're dressed, well, I'm dressed like Aladdin. Okay, so what is it?
So we have a normal array of embeddable components. We just list it there. And then we have embeddable component service that it returns the list of components. Why? Because we will need to access them anywhere. Hey, this is my list of embeddable components. I want to do something with them.
Right, it's kind of a collection. Well, it's a toolbox or a collection that you might have. Yeah.
So how to register these embeddable components? We have an ng module, a normal ng module. You declare the component. In this case, we just pass the array with all the components.
Nothing unusual there.
No. We register our service in the provider list. And finally, the most important bit is the entry component. What is this entry component? When you have a normal component and you put that into a template, the compiler is going to see those components. But since we are going to use these components in the dynamic pages, the compiler is never going to see them. So it's like saying, hey, I don't care about them. Let's delete them. So,
right. So if I have a selector like app-foo, I'm never going to see app-foo anywhere.
Nope.
On any template. Because it's just going to be thrown in there. So the compiler doesn't know about it. It would throw it away unless we did this.
That's correct.
Got it. So now that we've registered them, we've got to mega bootstrap them, right?
Yes.
Yeah. There's all kinds of other things you could say we were going to do with that, but we won't. Okay, so why do we say mega bootstrap? We say mega bootstrap because we're trying to make you think about what happens during a bootstrap. It turns out it's a lot like the process we're going to describe. You've got an app component, and it's really not expected to talk. It doesn't have any inputs or outputs. It fits the limitations that we described. It's going to throw away the content between the tags, and it could be dropped anywhere in the index.html. Who knows where it is? And then, once we've done that, what we also know is that you probably registered it with the app module. You remember that sort of bootstrap property, and you always wondered what that is? Well, you're registering this embeddable component in there, and then you're asking Angular to boot it. The only challenge here is that you get one and only one of these guys on the screen. Not too good for us. But we're going to mega bootstrap. We're going to mega bootstrap. We're going to take these components that we're going to just like all around the screen, and we're going to do essentially the same process. What do we do here? So, you want me to tell him? No, go ahead, tell him.
No, so tell him.
Okay, I'll tell him. All right. It's my slide. That's right, I forgot. Okay, so anyway, you're going to get a component factory that knows how to create this component, and you're going to slap together the injector, and we're going to see this in a minute, and the element is going to go in there, and it's going to plunk out all of those little components with a new one. So it's just going to do the thing you do once at the beginning of the application many times. But you need something to drive all this.
Yeah, we need the metadata. The metadata can be, for example, an HTML document, a normal HTML where we put some components in there.
Yeah.
Okay. We can create this HTML by hand, or we can generate it. For example, in the Angular docs, we write the docs using Markdown because it's a common format for authors. They don't need to know how to use Angular itself.
Yep.
So you can write normal Markdown, you put your components in there, and then we generate the metadata from there. We can store it, we can index it, retrieve it. You can have the metadata wherever you want. And they don't need to be in the same application.
So let's just quickly go over this because we're a little slow here. So it could be HTML.
It could be HTML, it could be JSON. You can put an ID of where to find the document, the HTML you want to show. You have CSS classes. You can decide where you want to position the component on the screen.
Yeah, Alex Rickable has a great piece on how to dynamically locate the content anywhere. So there's a link in the deck for how you can learn about that.
And you can put any feature you want. In fact, you can write this metadata in XML. Don't try that in home.
But it all comes down to this. And, you know, glad we got to this because this is the only thing you ever have to know. It's this one function. You probably never heard of it. It's component factory create. And so component factory is the thing that creates an instance of your embeddable component. And I'll show you how to get that. You want it to be able to access services from anywhere, from the top of the app, local services, so you'll need an injector for that. You'll need an element to stuff it in. That's the one you went and found. And if there's any content between the tags, you'll want to be able to put that right on the screen. Now, I said, you know, how do you get that factory? Well, you just throw it through this component factory resolver, and up it comes, and you get it. So that's the basics of it. Let's just sort of walk through the core code, which is this harness that does this stuff.
Yeah, so for each, we have to bootstrap a new document. So each time we bootstrap a new document, for each embeddable component factory, we find all the elements with this component selector. You can see there how we are using a simple query selector all, which is a normal HTML function. Yep. There's not something special. Then for each, for example, imagine we are working around the awesome embeddable component. For each awesome element
whatever the thing is,
we create an embedded component from the factory.
You just saw this function a second ago.
Yeah, and we replace the element. Then we try to map all the attributes because you cannot have dynamic inputs, but you can have static inputs on them. So we basically go to all the attributes in the embedded component and we pass that to the real component. And then we hold on to that component. What does that mean, Word?
Why do we hold on to that component? Because you want it to be a live component. And that means every time the change detection cycle happens in the big part of your application, you want change detection to happen for each of your embeddable components. And also, when the document changes, you need to get rid of, you need to destroy all the old embedded components and make way for the new ones. Otherwise, you get a memory leak. So this is the glue that kind of holds the whole thing together. You can do it all in one place, as we do in a class called the doc viewer component. And that's it, folks. Blah, 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 blah. I wish I could do him. Oh, silly wabbit.
You have to try.
I have to work harder. So let's see what this looks like in some of the code that we're doing. We have this wonderful harness up here that is actually an example of the application we're talking about.
Yeah, we have, in the left side, we have all the different documents, and in the right hand, we have all the dynamic content. So each, the tutorial intro, hero form, all of them are dynamic pages. They are structured in the runtime.
And this has, right off the gate, we have one that's doing this fortune cookie thing, a penny saved is a penny earned, blah, blah, blah. So how did we do it? Well, let's, I have to go the right way and put my glasses on. There we go. This is what it looks like. Somebody authored the document. This is the code, the text that you were reading. And then in here, there's our fortune. All right? Yeah, and that's all you had to do.
Yeah, leaving that aside, you can see that's a normal HTML. It's not special Angular things, just normal HTML with a custom element, which in this case is a component.
Yeah, and is there anything special about that component? Well, let's see what it is. This is the entire component, and it looks to me just like any other component.
It's a normal component. You have your service where you get your data from, a template where you put the information, but nothing else.
Nope, there's nothing special about this guy. Nope. And I just dropped it in. So let's do something a little more advanced. Here is, so we have this paragraph here, and we want to make it awesome in the most disgusting way possible. So we throw OMG, and we change every word the into the awesome, and it gets really tiresome. This is one of my least favorite embeddable components, but it's one we got. So how, I got to keep going the right way. How did we do that? Let's go take a look, and I believe that was in the intro.
Yes.
And so here was the paragraph unadorned as it originally was, and here it is with the awesome tag on it. So what we're showing is that you can grab the content between there. Now, we said that you can't interact with it as if there were real Angular components, and that is true. And yet we modified it, and so we had to do something where we hold our nose, which is that we gain access to the element, we grab the inner HTML, and now we're doing regex over it, everybody's favorite, and then jamming it back into the inner HTML.
Yeah, you have to remember that this inner HTML is HTML. If it has any Angular content inside, it's going to be treated as normal HTML.
But it's still an important capability to be able to do if you need to manipulate the thing itself. So we have shown an example of how you put stuff out there, but you might also want to take input in from the user. I mean, after all, this is Angular, and we build Angular components not to just put stuff on the screen, but also to be able to interact with the user. That's the value. And this right here is, right in the middle of everything, is a component. It's a form component. It's actually right out of the documentation. And it's absolutely live. So when I do this stuff and clear it out, we got validation, and we can submit it, and it does something, whatever it's supposed to do. And so we can actually do real Angular components that do real work. Mm-hmm. And if we were to look at how that was in the text, I believe that one is the hero form. And there you go, blah, 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 hero form, blah, 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 blah. The kind of thing that dogs can hear, blah, blah, blah. So there's our hero form.
I'm going to show you now the next one.
You're going to show me the next one?
Yes.
Step right up. This is going to scare me.
So, my favorite embedded component we have in the Angular is, there's a problem here. So, here we have and snippet of code. In this case is a console snippet to do npm start. But we also have custom snippets. We have this bit of code with a title in blue and a copy button where we can copy the snippets and paste it anywhere. And then we have this one. It's a wrong one, so we label that with a red message.
Did we create 3 separate components to do each of these styles?
No,
we did not.
We are going to see that now. In this case, we don't have a copy button because it's a bad snippet. So, let's see how that works. So here we have it's a code example embeddable component. And here you can see how we can pass input. It's not like we cannot use input at all. They are just static. In this case, hey, we want a code example using sh for the terminal and the class to give that nice black background. And then we have here one with a title.
That's what creates that blue header across there.
Yes, the title is what creates the blue header. And here we have a path to read our file. So in this case, just by having the avoid in it, it's going to put a red title.
Yep.
So this is another component. You can have your parameters, you can have content inside them, so you can do whatever you need.
And if we were to look in the code, what we would see, I think, is that the code...
Oh, it's true.
Yeah. You find the code, I'll talk about it. So inside is a code example, but there are actually 2 embeddable components that behave this way, and they delegate to a real component. So really, to do this, your embeddable component can be a shell around a whole tree of regular components that use everything that's available to you in Angular. You can put an entire application inside that and just use this little embeddable component wrapper around it to make it come to life as you sprinkle it into the code.
Yeah, and in this case, we can see all the attributes. They are property here, but they are attributes in the embeddable component. So if we solve the title and the path, they are here, and our doc viewer is able to pass those attributes to this property here automatically, which is super nice, thanks to Fabian, who did this change. And here we can see an AIO code, which is a normal component with normal input. So we redirect this embeddable component to a real component, as Word said, so we can have all our good things here.
So, Jesus,
yes.
Let's suppose, all right, we had this great toolbox, it's all under embedded. Let's suppose I have a component of my own, and I can't touch your toolbox. That's your module, you made it. What do I do?
So,
do we have an example of that?
Yes, we have.
So
here we have this questionnaire, which is custom one. You can build that from the server side. So the good thing about this one is that it is a normal component. It's not an embeddable component. Imagine this is a third-party one. So if we check the code, it is not in the embeddable folder.
Not in the embeddable module. It's not in our toolbox.
It has its own module with its own classes. So the interesting thing here
is we're completely locked out, right?
Yes, so here we have...
No, we're not. We're not locked out. We're totally locked in.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So here we have the module where we register this questionnaire, whatever this name. I can't pronounce that, sorry. So here we can see how we declare all our components, what we normally do. Then we have to mark it as an entry component.
Only the top one. We don't care about the nested ones. We only care about
because the top one is the only one that's going to be used directly in the dynamic pages. The other one that's going to be used by this one. And there's a good trick that my friend Ward is going to explain, please.
Oh, yes. So probably most of you have created modules and you've never done anything inside them. They've just been like module class and you're done. And it's almost like, what good is a class anyway? But it turns out that you can do stuff inside that module class. You can, for example, give it a constructor. And when you give it a constructor, that means you get injection. You are able to pass services into a module as it's being created. In this case, the service that we're actually interested in is the registry of all of our embeddable components. Right now, it only had the toolbox, the stuff that was the embedded ones that we had locked in. But of course, once we're given the service, we have access to that list. And what he's doing there is registering our top-level component into the toolbox. And suddenly, it joins the party. It can party on like any other normal toolbox. And so that's how that one gets in.
Yes. And finally, we have this, the long history one, which is a document where we use all our components, so you can read about them, how they work, all the ideas behind them, how to work.
And that is a doc, just like all the other ones, completely composed on the fly using the embeddable components here. So when you get this code, you get the secrets to the universe right there.
I will let you continue with the slides.
All right, let's do
I know
that.
you like slides.
All right, so not all is perfect.
Nope.
It's not all sweetness. No, there's some things that don't happen. So like one of these is
There's a limited nesting of the embedded components. As I said earlier, if you put the HTML, everything you put between the tags are going to be treated as HTML. So for example, here we try to put some fortune embeddable component and questionnaire inside the awesome.
And it didn't work so well, did it?
No, because it's going to be treated as HTML, so that prints directly the content.
So with our strategy, there's no way yet to be able to deal with nested inside a nested inside a nested. So that you just have one level of indirection. There must be other issues.
You tell me.
You tell me. Okay, should we tell them together?
Or someone can.
There's no, sing it together with me. No lazy loading of the embedded components. Actually, we're not sure about that. NG content selectors. They would work. But that's a topic for somebody who has more time than we have. When we say we don't have this, these are things we haven't really explored fully yet.
The thing is, when we created this doc viewer, we created that for the Angular IO side, and we have some specific needs. So some of these open issues, not because you can't do it, it's because we didn't need that for the Angular side. Right. So you can work on them. And
maybe you can contribute back, and then you can tell the world how we do these things. But we haven't figured it out ourselves yet, so we just put it out there. The most important thing we can say is that we did not do this all by ourselves.
Nope.
In fact, we had a wonderful team building the infrastructure.
Amazing people.
Yes. So, and some of them you even know, but there's Igor, of course, and there's Peter, who's running the show here at AngularConnect. There's George Kalapakis and Stephanie, who helped us with all the visual design. She was terrific. And Jules, who oversaw the whole thing and gave us some initial ideas. And Rob, who was in there providing all kinds of gadfly advice.
And my friend Philippe hidden there for moral support.
Oh, yes. Moral support, and he also testing.
Of course.
So that's our way to build oh, shoot. This entire talk is deprecated.
It was a fake.
It's entirely irrelevant. We should have told you that in the beginning, shouldn't we? You could have all gone over and seen Jeff Cross, but no, we would lose our audience and we would be feeling really badly about that.
Yeah.
So sorry, folks. None of this matters because Rob, who really annoys me, is always jumping. He's always stepping on my stuff, and here he is in here with this darn Angular Elements thing that you've probably been hearing about. And what can you do with that? Well, you get components, and you can sprinkle them across that, and you don't have to write the glue code that we showed him. None of that crap we showed him. Gone, right? So it's deprecated. I'm totally depressed. This talk is a total waste of time.
It is just magic.
All right. So if you want to learn about it, he's talking about it tomorrow, and he's going to make lots of fun of us. But the key thing to remember is it's a lab. It ain't really there yet, okay? Who knows if it'll ever get there? All right? So until it does, until he can deliver the goods, we got you covered here. Thank you.
Thank you
for coming.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. Okay, so just another little reminder that Lightning Talks, there's a board right outside Saturn right over here that you guys can sign up for Lightning Talks. Are you going to do a Lightning Talk, like 3 minutes? Talk about community, talk about Angular, talk about how Rob annoys you.
Yeah, he's the most annoying.
So make sure to sign up for it. We do need a few more submissions. I don't know, what else is going on? After hours is happening. Remember, there is a vegetarian burrito and Angular Air, the Angular Ale, not Angular Air. That too, though. And besides that, have fun at the next talk, which is going to be Lucas Roblicki doing Angular animations in Jupyter.
2, 1, 2. Plenty of level. 1, 2, 1, 2. Must remember my power supply's under here as well. And a lot of bangy cables. 1, 2, 2, 2. How is that for you? Rewriting the web. All right.